Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. Pleased to be joined by Kasey Kazliner, who is a student broadcaster at USC University of Southern California. How are you?
Doing great, man. Appreciate you having me on. We can talk.
Okay, so before I dig deep into your career a little bit, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody what you do?
I'm a sophomore at USC, about to wrap up my second year. I mostly a broadcaster. I do pretty much every sport. Baseball is kind of my main one. Basketball. This summer I'll be broadcasting games for a baseball team in NorCal, the Walnut Creek Crawdads. I also do podcasting and cover the LA Kings, so I have a full season credential with them. Going to the playoff game tonight, and so yeah, basically podcasting and broadcasting are, I mean, they kind of go hand in hand. Those are my main two things. They just love talking about sports, give my own opinions, give my own analysis. USC football, is big here, basketball. So definitely have a platform. And being able to broadcast games for Big Ten Plus has been super fun, as well as the radio. And so basically, somewhat newer here, but I've had a lot of resources I've been able to take advantage of. And I think that's been able to help me make those connections and get further in the industry.
So, how'd you get this start in this? Like, where'd this all start?
Yeah, so like you, I've been doing YouTube, for quite a while. I started YouTube in September of 2020 during COVID. I was just making videos about the Bay Area teams, and I mean, I made videos every day. I ended up making close to 2,000 recaps of Bay Area sports teams across the NHL, MLB, NBA, NFL, college sports. It goes on, and I think when you make 2,000 videos, you can start out rusty, and I certainly did, but you get better along the way. You talking to a camera, talking to other people, you make connections, people start to notice you, your channel gets subscribers. And then from there, I mean, I was applying to colleges, and USC has a great program for broadcasting. And I was like, I think I could do this for a career. And my resume was pretty good for a high schooler, considering I'd made that many videos. And I'd also worked alongside local teams. So that's kind of, well, that was my start. I was announcing games for also my high school basketball team. So really just getting all the reps I could get, and then that translating into, an acceptance to USC, and then more work there that I've been able to accomplish.
Okay. Favorite sport to call, and then I'll get into all the other stuff.
Yeah, I'm a fast talker, so I love basketball. Basketball at USC is pretty big, especially the women's team right now. Men's team has had some good years as well. So hopefully the next few years I can get some more reps. I called, I think, two or three basketball games this year. Of course, like as an underclassman, I don't get as many opportunities as some of my peers, but I love basketball and the fast-paced nature of the game. But baseball is a close second.
So, obviously this year is a little bit different for you because of course the teams that you're going to be covering. Obviously, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington are the same, but having to go and travel to the Midwest and sometimes even the East Coast. What was it like to broadcast a lot of new teams that you may not be familiar with?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you said, definitely a struggle when you're having to play teams, farther away. The schedules get kind of weird, the timing of everything gets weird. But honestly, I mean, before I came to USC, I wasn't like a USC fan. I was very knowledgeable about the team because, like they're local. I grew up rooting for the local teams like Cal, in my area. So had to learn a lot about the Pac-12 even when I came here. And then the Pac-12 goes away, and like you said, I have to learn a lot more. So that was definitely a learning curve. But I think being able to sort of have the knowledge of the Pac-12 in its own right. I mean, there's 18 teams in the Big Ten. Four of those are former Pac-12 teams. So that gives you a pretty good head start. And I mean, you hear about teams like Michigan, Ohio State, et cetera, every year. And so I think learning about that just looked like a lot of research behind the scenes. I find out usually a month in advance if I'm calling a game. Sometimes it's shorter. And so that gives me enough time. I mean, I really only need a week usually. And if, even less than that, I can make do. But I think the move to the Big Ten definitely gave me exposure to more teams. And I appreciate that for sure, even if there are struggles.
Yeah. So on top of that, you mentioned that that's not the only thing you do in this business. You got to do a lot. But you also have the pro sports ability as well with the podcasting with the Kings and all that stuff. How did that get put together?
Yeah, it's a funny story. So I used to be more of a writer
Yeah,
last year. I think a lot of broadcasters could say that's kind of where they got their start. Some
absolutely.
people want to make the jump to broadcasting. Some people want to go to other things. I knew I wanted to broadcast, but I knew that writing would give me a better, vocabulary, but also, just more reps. So I started out writing articles about the Kings. I've always been a big hockey fan, grew up in the Bay Area, big Sharks fan, and then come down here, writing a lot about, Kings analysis, what I'd seen, game recaps and whatnot. And then they took note of that. We applied for credentials, and last year I got to be a Saturday only correspondent. So every Saturday Kings home game, I'd be able to go. And that started second half of the season though. So I only got to go like 5 games. But I kept just putting in the work, writing articles, doing podcasts. And then this year they said, congrats, like we've seen your work. We want you to go full time. Started the podcast kind of around mid-season. I didn't really have that idea. I was just kind of writing and doing some like longer form recaps on the team's lines and whatever. And they're a pretty good team this year. So some good storylines. And then, the podcasting kind of came out of me wanting to talk more, and it's also a little bit more efficient after a game. I can just go record. And so, shout out to the Kings for giving me the chance. And that kind of came with a lot of like written, tens and tens of articles before I actually got to be able to go. You kind of have to prove yourself before you're going to step foot in a press box. So that came with reps.
Absolutely. So let's get because of course the Kings play tonight against the Oilers in the playoffs. Of course, you mentioned it, a much better team and all that, and all the other stuff. But where are we? What are the Kings' expectations really heading into the Western Conference playoffs starting tonight?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the hard part with the NHL playoffs is the first round. You really have a lot of good matchups that really could be later round. Like for example, the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Panthers. Like that's a really good matchup.
Yeah.
Um, like there's matchups in round one that could, they're it makes sense because of the format. But the point I'm trying to make is the Kings could either be a first round exit or a Stanley Cup winner, and it's hard to tell because they haven't beaten the Oilers now 3 years in a row. This is the fourth year in a row they're playing them in the first round, and they have home ice advantage. I think if the Kings win, they can make a run. Their path doesn't seem that hard to me. I mean, they have to beat Vegas, who they've already beaten pretty dominantly a few times this year. Would maybe have to beat Colorado or Winnipeg. That could be tough. I think the Kings could go all the way. I don't think it's something to bet on, but they improved their goalie tandem, adding Darcy Kemper. Their defense looks really good. Their offense has looked different since picking up Andrei Kuzmenko. Their power play is still shaky, but I think Kuzmenko makes it more dynamic. I think they're a team that can make a deep run. I think they have to get past Edmonton first. That starts with winning, at least solidifying the fact that they have home ice advantage, and winning the first two at home would be huge. And they could do that, but we'll see what happens tonight. So,
It'd
yeah.
be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah.
So, like you mentioned, you're a sophomore. You've got a lot going on. How do you manage all the time that you have to put into all this? Because it can be a grind, that is for sure. But how do you find time to kind of separate your work life from the personal side of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. I think, personal life is a big thing for me. I have friends. I live with my roommates are all my friends. So it's definitely, that's nice because I mean, I don't have to create separate plans to hang out with them. But I think a lot of people, and it's a sort of cliche, but a lot of people say, it's a fun business to be in, but it's also not a glamorous business. And there is some truth to that. Like, I mean, I love going to games, but I'm going to 4 hockey games this week, and two Kings, two Ontario Reign, and it's gonna be busy. And I have to just gear up ahead of time. I think like that's my greatest advice is like, if you know what you're doing a week ahead, it's way easier to prepare for it. Sometimes you get opportunities on the fly. But I think for me, it's all about preparation, because I think the game itself doesn't take that much time, but the preparation for calling a game or even podcasting, like I need to know about what the Kings are going to go like with their lineup and whatnot tonight. That takes time. And so I think if you can get the preparation done, you make your life easier the day of. And that's kind of what I preached. Sometimes it's harder to do, but I don't sleep that much. I'll be honest. I don't get much sleep. And so that's another thing you kind of have to sacrifice. Probably not the healthiest of habits, but I mean, it's worth it, I think, because you can find ways to take advantage of opportunities by being more efficient with your time and not being distracted. So that's kind of my way of going at it.
So this next coming year for you, like, what do you want to accomplish in your junior year, Casey?
I want to I want to broadcast every USC football game home and away. So I want to go to every single game. That would be out of pocket, so I have to figure that out. But well, not the home games, but because I can walk to the stadium. Uh, I want to get more in depth with King stuff. I want to grow the podcast more. Skate of Thrones is what it's called. I also podcast for the USC baseball team and the basketball team. And so I want to, yeah, I want to grow my relationships with some of the players and the coaches.
Mhm.
Baseball's been great because there's more access with them. I also want to get better as a baseball broadcaster. Right now, in case you weren't aware, the baseball team does not play on campus. They play in Irvine, which does not allow us to call games on site. We have to call them remotely. And so that's very hard to do. It also kind of can mess you up sometimes. You don't know where the ball's going. You can't read fly balls. So I want to our baseball new field will be open next year on campus. I want to become a bit better baseball broadcaster. Just really get better. I want as many reps as I can get, and that comes with time and patience. But I think if I get those reps, I can improve.
There's been a lot of talk about, a lot of companies have you mentioned broadcasting off of a monitor and stuff like that, and you're not there and you can't really see everything. What is that like for you? And is there a lot of challenges with that compared to being there?
Definitely a lot of challenges. Yeah, I mean, in baseball particularly, you can't see who's on the on deck circle. You can't see who's in the bullpen. You really can't see the runners on the bases. You get the TV view and a couple other views. So, if there's a guy on base and a guy gets an extra base hit, you don't necessarily know if that guy's scoring from first or not. You kind of have to just wait, and it doesn't make for the best call. And I know that's I know Fox pioneered that with like some UFL games, and I toured Fox inside, and they do get a lot of cool angles and whatnot. And I think for football, it's easier because football, you everything is happening in one location for the most part. You have your line of scrimmage and then wherever the ball goes. Whereas baseball, the ball could be hit anywhere, and so that is very challenging. I think basketball, it wouldn't be as hard on a monitor, but I think it's very challenging. I think for baseball, it does give you good practice. However, I don't think I want to call baseball games for a living necessarily on a monitor, but I mean, if that's where the industry is going, you have to adapt, right? So I want to try to get better, and even if it's through that means of being remote, then I'm just gonna make do with what I have.
Um, and really lastly, like where are your like long-term goals? What do you want to do?
I want to broadcast games for a living. Again, I try to be versatile. Like I told you about a few different sports I've done: hockey, baseball, basketball, football. It goes on. I mean, I know at some point I'll have to probably narrow it down a little bit, but I'd love to call basketball games on the radio, TV, baseball on the radio, TV, football, radio, TV. Really just play by play is the main goal. I also love studio anchoring. So, like, doing that as well. I've done a few shows here at USC that we have, but I think really just being on air in some capacity and growing that, starting out in a smaller role, putting in the work, showing why I deserve to be there, and then, calling games. I love doing that. It's hard to do. Not everyone, can do it. And that's why put the stock into it because I think I'm worthy of it, but I also think it's a challenge, and so I want to be able to call games for a living.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
Casey, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, and best of luck in your career. We will definitely have you on again sometime.
really appreciate it, Casey. Thank you.